What is going on, everyone? Welcome back to another About Teams video. And like we talked about yesterday, it's just going to be me today. But with that being said, still got to recap some games. And we'll start with the NBA and the one game yesterday, the Boston Celtics versus the Indiana Pacers. Game 2, Eastern Conference Finals, and the Celtics come out with a 126-110 win. But going into the preview yesterday, the key was for Indiana was to win that game 1. And I hate to go back because, for Indiana, it's a tough pill to swallow. Should have had it, just couldn't inbound the ball. And that's kind of ultimately what cost them the game after Jalen Brown hits the 3, goes to overtime. Crazy good game, but Boston pulls it out. But that just felt like a game Indiana had to have. And then last night, credit to the Pacers. They didn't come out, slow. They came out. They ended up winning the first quarter, but still was, tightly contested. Boston then built a big lead early in the second quarter, going on a 17-0 run. But Indiana threw another punchback, mainly led by Pascal Siakam. It was just pretty much Indiana's only offense for most of this game. Just magnificent efficiency. I believe finished with 28. Had a big second quarter to keep the Pacers in this, and they were only down by like 6. But then the third quarter and just the second half in general, gotta give a shout out to Jalen Brown because people are critical, and rightfully so after the playoffs with Miami last year. They did that left-hand dribble comments, but he silenced the haters these playoffs. He's arguably been Boston's best player so far these playoffs, with Jason Tatum's slow start in the playoffs. But with that being said, the Celtics haven't needed Jason Tatum. And like I've stated, I don't really care how Jason Tatum plays until the NBA Finals, when that's probably their real only test now, with the question marks of Halliburton. And obviously, being a 1 seed, you're facing an A seed. Miami Heat, obviously, no Jimmy Butler, but, they took care of business. Cavaliers, no Donovan Mitchell, but, Celtics can't control that. That's just who they play. And they've taken care of business, and I don't really care what Jason Tatum does until the NBA Finals when, the lights are brightest, and he's been criticized because of his Warriors performance in the 2022 NBA Finals, and that's kind of been the narrative about Jason Tatum. But, if he performs and Celtics win a championship like they should as the favorites, there won't be, those Tatum haters anymore, and he'll prove why he's like a top 5 player in this league and just truly how great he is. But, shout out to Jalen Brown, though, in this game. 40 points, and the Celtics, Derek White knocking down shots. Drew Holiday's been magnificent, as we saw his defense with a huge step up in game 1. Really solid again in game 2. And Derek White, like I said, just solid. Another, I believe, around 20 points for the Celtics. It was just a team effort, obviously led by Jalen Brown. Jason Tatum really kind of struggled from the field, but still, got some late points in the fourth, but it didn't really matter at that point. But, Celtics take care of business. Indiana, the big question is Tyrese Halliburton's injury. Left the game with a hamstring, which is kind of what it's re-aggravated, same hamstring that slowed him down back in January. He pushed through that injury, but that's when we really saw the huge dip in production, especially from three-point range, efficiency-wise. And even if he plays, how healthy really is he leaving this game? For Indiana, you head back home. But, this series, Indiana is playing with house money right now. If they win one game, that's great for them in Indiana. But Boston, realistically, if Tyrese doesn't even play, should be sweep or, 1-1 at the very least. Going back to Boston, probably closing out in 5. But, Indiana, they had a great season. Avoiding the play-in as a whole, making the 6th seed, upsetting the Bucks. I know no Giannis, but you still have to play the team, play the games, beat the Knicks in a hard-fought 7-game series, even though the Knicks are injured. Jalen Brunson played 6.5 games. Josh Hart, they still had some key pieces, and the Knicks were still heavy favorites after that 76ers series. So, this is Indiana. Huge step in the right direction, but I just don't see a path to how Indiana can actually win this series at this point. But, that's what happens when you face a team like Boston. They're just a team on the mission. They've been to like 6 out of the 8 last year for Eastern Conference Finals, and they're finally looking for that breakthrough. And this might be the year. They have a solid roster, up and down, a bench, Sam Hauser, Peyton Pritchard off the bench shooting. And then you have other players like, Kristaps Porzingis that still hasn't played yet for most of these playoffs. You got him back. It's going to be tough for Indiana. If Tyrese especially just isn't 100%, there's probably no way they can win this series. But, this is a huge step for Indiana in the right direction. In Indiana, if they get swept, lose in 5, like the most likely scenario, they shouldn't be looking at this as a down year. Obviously they've kind of accomplished beyond what anyone's expectations were, probably even the most diehard Pacers fans. So, huge shout out to Indiana. But, I mean, as we talked about, Boston is just a team on a mission this year. And Brad Stevens has done a great job building that team, was a solid head coach, moved to general manager. They've gone through some head coaches with the Amy Udoka situation. And now Joe Mazzulla, I mean, he's gotten criticized, but we'll see what happens in the NBA Finals because this team is 100% win the series. And if I'm wrong, we'll come back to talk about it on the podcast once Nick joins. I'm a huge Celtics fan for him. So happy to just see Boston, be back. They're trying to get that 18 title, separate themselves from the Lakers again after the Lakers tied up in titles in 2020, the bubble, I believe it was their last one. But yeah, this was, I was kind of expecting this game 2 performance. Indiana had them, lost them. And a big part for why Indiana struggled was they didn't get the same bench production from TJ McConnell. Obi Toppin stole 11, but he had like 11 alone in game 1 in the first quarter. So, they didn't get that same production. And now just the question marks, Tyrese Halliburton in the 27 minutes, wasn't as aggressive. Maybe it was that hamstring that was bothering him because he didn't take many shots. I believe only 7 or 8 shots. Just not aggressive. And Miles Turner wasn't efficient, not going to get it done. Aaron Nesmith kind of flying all over the place, didn't really seem to keep his composure in this game. But, Indiana's still a young team, hasn't been here before, and that's the stuff you kind of fear with teams and why you always lean towards the more experienced teams and why they prevail more. That's why you don't see like 20-year-old stars or even Tyrese Halliburton's age, 23, 24, like getting to a finals just like that, because it takes time. You have to go through these kind of, brick walls like Michael Jordan had to with the Detroit Pistons. The Pistons had to with the Celtics. It's, a whole cycle. But, that's what the NBA is. You got to go through the war before you can come out on top. And that's what the Pacers are going through right now. It's valuable experience. Celtics have already been through this war multiple times. These battles, they're ready. They want it this year. That's a huge credit to what they've done as a culture so far. But I'm excited to see how game 3 goes. Indiana goes back home. Maybe they can ride the hot fans. Maybe Tyrese, is mostly himself and they can somehow win this game. It'll be interesting to see how game 3, because no team has ever come back from 3-0. So the Celtics win game 3. The series is officially over. But with that being said, thank you guys for listening to our game 2 recap, and we'll make sure to post a recap for game 3 and kind of preview everything for the rest of the series as it goes on. Peace.